Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in our complimentary webinar series for U.S. federal government contractors. We are coming to you live today from Washington, D.C. You probably found out about today's webinar through our newsletter, which reaches over 23,000 federal government contractors and service providers. Today's session is complimentary and also recorded. You can find the recording on our website and YouTube channel about 24 hours after the webinar. We have over 525 complimentary webinars on our YouTube channel. This includes all 52 parts of the FAR and DFAR and hundreds of webinars and strategical tactical topics. If you'd like to advertise in our newsletter or in any of our upcoming webinars, please email us at hello@jenniferschaus.com. So a little bit about us. We are a specialized consulting firm focused on working with established federal contractors. We work with product, service, and software firms across the globe. For more information about our services, please visit our website and select About Us. As mentioned, today's webinar is covering the FAR supplements. It is complimentary and recorded. We began this series January 2020, and you can find these past recordings on our website as well as future schedule and registration links. As you can see here, we have covered several of the FAR supplements already, and we will wind down the series on August 24th with the Veterans Administration. Then on Fridays, we cover the same agency or department in a Playbook series. The Friday webinars discuss upcoming bidding opportunities, contracting trends, small business resources, and sometimes feature a government speaker. The full schedule and past recordings are available on our website under the Playbook tab. So now we would like to thank our sponsors who help make the webinar series possible. We would like to thank the Virginia PTAC. The Virginia PTAC is based out of GMU in Fairfax and offers free one-on-one counseling to firms in Virginia on federal, state, and local procurement topics. Online resources and group training are free with no restrictions on business location. If you are interested in learning more, please use the links provided to explore what PTACs can offer. And a special thanks to the Federal Business Council. The FBC creates and manages virtual and in-person meetings and events to connect appropriate industry and government thought leaders, product providers, and solutions with government programs that use them. The FBC works with mission-specific programs for a variety of agencies to connect government and industry in the form of in-person and virtual conferences, training events, policy dialogue, and outreach. Over the last 40+ years, the FBC has become a comprehensive resource for connecting industry and federal government. DASN is an IT and cloud solutions provider working with corporations, the military, and government agencies to lower their costs, increase scalability, improve operational efficiency, and meet compliance regulations using targeted cloud-based solutions. DASN is a certified partner of Oracle NetSuite, a premier tier Google Cloud partner, and a certified partner of Cisco, Virtu, AO Docs, and Authenticate. For more information about DASN services or to schedule a complimentary consultation, please email Joe Alston. His contact information is in the lower left corner of your slide, and there you can visit the DASN website. Okay, so we're all here today to dig into the FAR supplement on Agency of International Development. Our speaker today is Gregory Jacobs, and he represents the firm Polsinelli. As a reminder, we do not take questions, so if you have questions for Gregory, his contact information will be displayed at the end of the presentation, and you can contact him directly. Thank you, Gregory, for joining us today. I'll put myself on mute and wait for your cue for next slides. The floor is now yours. Begin whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you very much. I'm excited to be here today giving this presentation. As you said, I'm Greg Jacobs. I'm an attorney with the Polsinelli law firm. I'm the chair of Polsinelli's government contracts practice, and my practice spans all aspects of government contracting from a legal perspective. So we counsel clients on a variety of issues day-to-day compliance, teaming agreements, subcontracts, those types of day-to-day matters. We also have quite a bit of work in bid protests, in claims and disputes with the government, and with internal investigations. We work across all industries, product, services, defense, commercial items, etc. And I do have several clients that are USAID contractors and grantees. So this is an area of particular interest for me because I get to work in it quite a bit. Before I go further, I'd like to thank Jennifer Schaus and her team for asking me to speak today, and also all of you for attending or listening after the fact, and for your interest in this topic. Next slide, please. So today, we want to get to the main legal issues that contractors deal with that are unique to USAID. Going to spend a little bit of time before we get to those issues, just setting the context, because I think the USAID context is somewhat unique compared to other federal agencies in the procurement space. So we'll start with the USAID Environment, talk just briefly about USAID's hybrid approach to contracting / assistance awards, go through the key features of the AID acquisition regulation. I might refer to it as the 8R at various points, and then talk about at the end common legal issues that come up for USAID contractors and that I've in particular seen in my practice. Next slide, please. So starting with the USAID Environment. Next slide, please. Just start, and I certainly won't read this to you verbatim, but it's helpful to keep in mind USAID's mission. Most of you may know that USAID is an independent federal agency, but it exists under the policy guidance of the Department of State. So it's technically independent from the Department of State, but obviously there are very close ties between state and AID, and state as being the primary driver of US foreign policy, USAID as being one of the agencies that help implement that foreign policy. There's a lot of coordination, but if you look at the AID's mission statement, you can see right in that first sentence, it's promoting and demonstrating democratic values abroad. So promoting US interests around the world in having other countries subscribe to the values of democracy and markets, and providing humanitarian assistance and healthcare assistance where helpful. Those are all right there embedded in USAID's mission statement. And that's a lot of what you see in both its policy and in its contract and grant awards that it makes. Next slide, please. Some quick spending facts for USAID. In fiscal year 2020, which is the last year which is the most recent year with publicly available data, the agency spent about $22 billion, a little over $22 billion worldwide, and that took place in 154 different countries, and it touched a real wide range of industries. So certainly agriculture is part of the mission. Sanitation and health are critical issues to providing assistance abroad, but also things like civil society. I sometimes call it government building, helping other countries build up democratic institutions, local and regional government institutions, to strengthen both their democratic practices and their overall civil society. The programs span a good part of the globe. including Mexico and throughout South America. There's quite a bit of programming in Southern Asia, and then throughout the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and a large part of Africa. If looking at the largest countries in terms of 2020 spend, it's an interesting mix. You see Jordan, which was the country with the largest spend. Jordan, obviously a close U.S. ally in the Middle East. Afghanistan with over $1 billion spent in 2020. We don't know what those numbers will look like yet in 21 and 22, but I think based on the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, I think we would expect that to be substantially less. And then several countries in Africa with substantial spend in the area of 700 million, and then Syria there as well. Syria, obviously a very complicated situation from a governance perspective, but still, even with the civil war and all of the dangers of operating in Syria, quite a bit of USAID activity in that country. Next slide, please. Just quickly, looking at spending by sector, this again gives a good picture of the wide variety of activities that USAID is spending money to support. Emergency response, HIV/AIDS being the largest two. I talked about government building, that's government and civil society being one of the largest, and then quite a bit in the areas of health, welfare, agriculture, and education. Again, strengthening other countries through U.S. assistance, and hopefully in that process, strengthening ties between the United States and those countries. And this list is not complete. There are about 15 or so other categories with smaller amounts of spending. But it shows that there really is quite a variety of activity that USAID oversees with that roughly $22 billion in foreign spending. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk just very briefly to note, we're going to focus on contracting and procurement activities today, but more so than any agency that I've dealt with, USAID uses a combination, what I call a hybrid approach, between contracts, grants, and cooperative agreements to accomplish its goals. Just in general, when you think about the normal meaning of those terms, contracts are typically used to procure goods and services. Grants are a transfer of federal money to a non-federal recipient to accomplish a government goal or purpose. And cooperative agreements are similar to grants in that they involve a transfer of federal money to a non-federal party, but the government tends to have a substantive role in the performance of the work. So those are the three main buckets that we see across most of government spending. USAID really uses them interchangeably more than most agencies. And so sometimes with most agencies, you can look at a piece of work and say, okay, that's an acquisition of services, that's going to be a contract, or that is a program that's set up to have a recipient go out and spend government money to achieve certain goals, that's going to be a grant. It's really much harder to tell. So we see, particularly in the international development space, we'll be focusing primarily today, situations where things that look like grants are performed as contracts and vice versa. Next slide, please. So the consequences of that for contractors and grantees that work in this space are several. For development contractors, first of all, they're typically, if they have substantial USAID work, they're typically operating under several different types of agreements at the same time. So when I talk to my clients that are NGOs that are performing international development contracts, they are moving oftentimes in the same country, sometimes with the same personnel overseeing them, between a contract or a grant or a cooperative agreement, and sometimes the work can feel very similar. Contracts may be fixed price or they could be cost type. Grants and cooperative agreements are nearly always going to be cost type. And so when you are performing, particularly if you're performing a fixed price contract at the same time you have a grant or cooperative agreement that's being performed on a cost basis, you have to be really mindful of the differences between the two. And certainly when you're tracking your costs and considering whether a certain cost is allowable under a grant or a cost type contract, what work is allocable to which award, you really have to be, I think, extra careful if you have work that is fixed price, a fixed price contract, where those concerns just aren't as present, that's being performed at the same time as a cost type grant. Something also that's worth noting is with respect to indirect cost rates. USAID oftentimes negotiates indirect cost rates on an agency-wide basis through NICRAs, which are just negotiated indirect cost rate agreements for a particular contractor or grantee, and that those will most often apply across the contractor or grantee's entire portfolio of both contracts and grants. I think USAID is, if not the only one of the few agencies that does apply that universal approach. And it's something that, again, for organizations that are performing under all of those types of agreements, having a NICRA that makes sense across their whole business is something that is very important. Next slide, please. Just quickly to note the applicable law for each. Under the contracts, certainly you start with the Federal Acquisition Regulation, which is the baseline for all of federal procurement. Layered on top of that is the AID-AR, or ADAR if you prefer. And then, of course, you can get into contract-specific provisions that would apply to that particular piece of work. On the grant and cooperative agreement side, your baseline is the Uniform Guidance, 2 CFR Part 200. USAID, like most agencies, like most grant-making agencies, has its specific set of grant rules, and those are found at 2 CFR Part 700. And then again, you get into agreement-specific provisions that apply to that particular work. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk through some of the more interesting and unique provisions of the ADAR now. And in doing that, I'm going to focus in particular on the international development mission of USAID and the provisions that apply to to procurement in that area. USAID, like any agency, is also out there buying office equipment and software and cybersecurity services and a host of other services in support of the agency and its operations within the US. And those procurements, for the most part, look a lot like other civilian agency procurements. There might be some additional clauses that you see, but substantively, there's not a tremendous difference between those and any other civilian agency procurement under the FAR. Where you get into the real differences under the ADAR is in the unique context of the international development work. And so I'm going to focus on some of the provisions that we see in that area. And the first place I want to start is with the role of the mission director, because this is something unique. The ADAR defines the mission director as the principal officer in the mission in the cooperating country or his or her designated representative. In federal contracting, we are so used to the vast majority of authority residing with the contracting officer. The contracting officer has the authority to enter into contracts, to modify contracts, and to make most important decisions regarding contractual performance. Now, AID procurements also have contracting officers, and in the area of the administration of the contract itself, the award and administration of the contracting officer still has authority. But the regulations, the ADAR also recognizes and delegates to the mission director quite a bit of operational authority with respect to performance of the contract. So issues about how the work will be performed, when it will be performed, when it will be stopped under certain circumstances, place of performance, and a host of in-country decisions and approvals, some of which we'll note in connection with some of the other provisions as we go on today. Those rest with the mission director. So when you are a USAID contractor, it's important to really have a clear understanding of those lines of authority, particularly when you need to get certain contractual actions approved, certain performance items approved. In several cases, in a number of cases, if the decision relates to the actual work in country, it's the mission director that the contractor should be coordinating with. Next slide, please. Some other key roles that are unique to USAID contracting. We have the chief of party. This is the contractor's lead representative in country, and I should say that the country of performance, this is a term that's used throughout the ADAR, the country of performance, the country where the foreign assistance or development work is being performed, is called the cooperating country in this parlance. So the chief of party is the contractor's lead person in the cooperating country. Person is recognized as having responsibility for the supervision of both the staff that's performing the work and of performance itself. A cooperating country national is just a citizen of the cooperating country. So if you are doing work in Philippines or Nigeria, it's nationals of those countries are cooperating country nationals, and it's quite common for contractors to hire local country staff to perform the work. Third country nationals are citizens of a third country, as you might imagine, who are working in the cooperating country, and sometimes they are likewise hired on to help the contractor perform the work. And the concept of a dependent, this is something that comes up in several provisions that we'll talk about in a few minutes. Spouses of individuals who are performing in the country, children who are under the age of 21 or who are otherwise incapable of self-support, and parents and siblings of the individual who's performing the work who are at least 51% dependent on the individual. And dependence, that's a concept that becomes important both for US persons who are in the cooperating country performing the work, and also for third country nationals. It's something that is less important or perhaps not important at all, for cooperating country nationals who are already citizens of and typically resident in the cooperating country. Next slide, please. So one unique provision of the ADAR are the vetting requirements that we find, and this is, as you can imagine, there can be security concerns both at a operational level and also national security concerns that come from going into other countries, performing work in those environments. Sometimes those environments can be dangerous, and there could be hostile elements in the cooperating country that particularly could be hostile to American organizations or American government work overseas. And so for that reason, vetting becomes critically important on these programs. And partner vetting requirements are something that often attach to contracts that are being performed overseas. And so the vetting requirements include key individuals for both contractors and subcontractors. And subcontractors are a particularly interesting piece here because typically, and this is most often the case on larger contracts, you can have a subcontractor mix that is a combination of both US-based subcontractors and also subcontractors that are part of the cooperating country. Organizations or companies or even individuals that are cooperating country nationals. And so given that factor, subcontractor vetting to ensure both operational and national security becomes particularly important. So the key individuals who have to be vetted for contractors and subcontractors include the officers of the governing body, so that's your board officers. If you have a board of directors, for example, the principal and deputy officers of the organization, so that's your CEO or executive director, and then the deputy to that individual, and then the chief of party or program manager, either or both, if there are both, would have to be subject to this type of vetting. And it also requires that if there are a replacement of any of those key individuals, they also have to be submitted to USAID for vetting by the agency. Next slide, please. It's worth noting the small business subcontracting requirements. Those who are used to FAR-based contracting, of course, are often familiar with some small business subcontracting requirements that apply to large businesses that are performing government work and that are encouraged to utilize small business contractors, small business subcontractors to the maximum extent possible where there are subcontracting opportunities. In addition to those typical FAR-based requirements, USAID has the additional requirement under the Foreign Assistance Act to involve small businesses in foreign assistance and development work as much as possible. Next slide, please. So in furtherance of that, we have a small business subcontracting provision, which is at ADAR 752.219-8, and that is to be included anytime the utilization of small business concerns FAR clause is included, and it requires the contractor, again, to the maximum extent possible, to give notice to USAID's Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization at least 45 days before making a purchase of goods or services that exceed the simplified acquisition threshold. And the notice needs to basically describe what's being procured, the goods or services, what the closing date will be for offers, on those and the address where offers can be submitted. And again, this is just a layered on top requirement that USAID uses to try to meet its obligations under the Foreign Assistance Act to involve small businesses in foreign assistance contracting. Next slide, please. Medevac Services, and that's ADAR 752.228-70. This provision is required in all contracts that require the performance of contractor employees overseas. The mission director can make an exception to these requirements if he or she determines that the local health care that's available is sufficient, is of sufficient quality, that the individuals that are performing in the cooperating country are not as likely to need Medevac services. But unless that determination is made, the contractor is required to obtain Medevac coverage for all U.S. persons, and that's U.S. citizens and also U.S. resident aliens and third country nationals and their authorized dependents who are overseas in connection with the contract. The coverage costs are reimbursable. They are allowable. They still need to be demonstrated to be reasonable and allocable to the contract before they can be reimbursed, but they are allowable costs. And they're not required, the contractor's not required to go out and get special coverage if the Medevac coverage is already included in the normal healthcare policies that cover these individuals. But if Medevac is not included, then unless an exception is granted, that is coverage that a contractor has to go out and get. Next slide, please. Contractor mission relationships, and this is a provision that's in the ADAR at 752.713. And I think this is a real interesting one because it illustrates just what makes USAID contracting unique. And that is that you are not just providing in the case of international development work, a service to the government, but the contractor in providing that service and in giving that foreign assistance is really a part of US foreign policy. So this is a provision that is required in all contracts that involve overseas performance. And what it states is that the work is an important part of the United States Foreign Assistance Program, and that the contractor, while responsible for the work, is to defer to the mission director with respect to all aspects of performance that impact US foreign policy, and is to keep the mission director closely informed about the work, about the status of the work, about how the work is going, and in particular about the aspects of the work that impact foreign policy. So this really requires close collaboration between the contractor and the local official, the local US government officials, particularly the mission director, to make sure that the work is aligned with US foreign policy goals. The clause also provides that the US ambassador can remove any employee from the contract for any reason, and that the removal and replacement of that employee will be at no charge to USAID. Next slide, please. The next point that I want to cover, again, this is something that is unique in this context, and I think this is the last ADAR slide that I want to highlight. It's 752.7033, physical fitness. Again, a unique concept that we don't see in other parts of the federal acquisition regulations. But it's required for all contracts, again, all contracts involving overseas performance. It only applies to US and third country nationals. So only those individuals who will be coming to the cooperating country in order to perform the work. And the requirement varies based on whether the individual's assignment will be for less than 60 days or for 60 days or more. But the idea behind this clause is to help ensure that any individuals who are traveling and then residing in the country where the work will be performed are physically fit enough to do that and physically capable of performing whatever activities will be required. For assignments of less than 60 days, the contractor for each employee must obtain a statement from a licensed physician that the individual is physically able to perform the activity. And then for assignments of 60 days or more, the employees and their dependents, so any dependents that will be joining the employee in the cooperating country during the course of the assignment, have to have the contractor employee physical examination form both completed and submitted to the Embassy Health Unit for review. Next slide, please. So that covers the ADAR clauses that I wanted to highlight. The last two topics I'm going to discuss are common legal issues that come up for contractors, and of course that's when they call their government contracts lawyer on USAID contracts. And these certainly are not unique to USAID, but they do come up quite a bit in the USAID performance context. Next slide, please. And the first one is cost disallowance. I would say that when my USAID contractor and grantee clients call me to ask for my help on an issue, something that's other than just sort of routine day-to-day, what does this clause mean kind of questions, this is the most common subject. Costs that have been disallowed under either a cost type contract or a grant or cooperative agreement. And the reason why you see this being such a common issue, I think, is because the performance environment can be so challenging. So we see situations where you have, as I mentioned before, in-country subcontractors, some of which may not have been subcontractors under U.S. government programs before, some of which may not do business in the same way that U.S. government, that U.S. organizations do business, may have unclear ownership or unclear corporate forms, for example, or just may otherwise operate in a way that's different than U.S. companies are used to. And the environments can be very challenging. You can have security concerns, things coming up last minute. So for example, one particularly for work that has taken place in the Middle East, Iraq and Afghanistan, there had been quite a bit of international development work under USAID programs. I worked with contractors that found it necessary to go obtain physical security for their facilities and for their personnel on a last-minute basis, and had those costs questioned. Either the costs were too much or they hadn't been properly approved. So you have a challenging operating environment and quite a bit of typically back and forth between contractors and grantees and USAID in order to properly document the fact that certain costs are reasonable and allocable and allowable in order to have them reimbursed by the agency. And so the best thing to do, obviously, to the extent possible, is to have well-documented processes, both for the approval of certain costs and then how those costs are to be documented. Having a close relationship with the mission director, the person who's closest to the work in country, to make sure that he or she is very aware of, for example, last-minute emergency purchases, or just issues with vendors or subcontractors, because companies that are, or organizations that are more lax about those issues, are much more likely to end up in disputes with USAID about cost disallowances. And those disputes can sometimes, you see audits that take place 2 or 3, 4 years later, where the difficult in-country situation or the security concerns have sometimes resolved, and USAID is denying or disallowing costs for a substantial expense, and it becomes, with the benefit of hindsight, maybe the contractor should have documented better or gotten approvals for it. But of course, the hindsight several years later is very difficult. They're very different than the situation at the time. So doing the best you can to have well-defined processes to minimize those issues is the best way to deal with that problem. Next slide, please. And as a last topic, I think it's important to highlight the issue of whistleblower protection. This is something that USAID has shown is very important to it in connection with its overseas contract and grant programs. This is large amounts of US cash being transferred overseas for foreign policy purposes, dealing with, again, subcontractors that sometimes can be not as reputable or not used to doing business with the U.S. government. And so it's very important. USAID maintains a very active Inspector General program that's designed to identify and combat fraud, waste, and abuse. And as part of that program, really prioritizes the ability of whistleblowers to bring contractor and grantee fraud, waste, and abuse to the government's attention. So USAID was out there, was very forward in implementing the pilot program for whistleblower protections. That was something even before it became statutory law. That was you found those pilot program, whistleblower pilot program clauses in USAID contracts. It comes down hard on contractors that required confidentiality agreements with their employees that could block valid whistleblowing activity. Those confidentiality agreements can sometimes be at the time of hiring, sometimes at the time of separation, but in either event, if they prohibit the employee from undertaking valid whistleblowing activity, most federal agencies at this point take a dim view of that. I would say USAID and the Inspector General at that agency take particularly dim views. So if you are a USAID contractor, my advice is to make sure that your agreements, your confidentiality agreements with your employees, again, both either at inception of employment or at separation, do not block or deter whistleblowing activity, because that is something that can be a very important issue and a negative issue for USAID. And with that, I am going to wrap up. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for your attention. My contact information was provided in the slides. If anyone has any follow-up questions or discussion points, I would certainly welcome them. And otherwise, I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg, for a great presentation. Thank you to all those who attended. The recordings and slides will be available within 24 hours or less. With that, this concludes our webinar. Thank you so much, everyone.